Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the second Recover Your Spark live mental health clinic. We're going to start just by introducing ourselves quickly. My name is Zoe Clues. I'm a hypnotherapist and I specialise in complex PTSD, anxiety, depression and self-esteem. The reason we're doing this is because we know that a lot of people are suffering with their mental health at the moment. Not everyone can afford therapy. In fact, many can't, and there's very long waiting lists with the NHS. So we wanted to provide a solution. And over to Neil.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Neil Shah. I'm the Chief De-Stressing Officer of the Stress Management Society and the self-appointed Chief De-Stressing Officer of Great Britain. I also run a research and consultancy organisation called International Wellbeing Insights. I've been in the wellbeing, stress management and mental health field for almost 2 decades now. And this is my passion, this is my reason for being. This is why I'm here on planet Earth, is to hopefully inspire and empower people to take positive steps to increase their resilience. And I'm very proud and pleased to be a part of not only this clinic, but Recover Your Spark and the broader recovery campaign at a time when this is, for me, as big a pandemic as everything else that we are battling on a daily basis.
Thank you, Neil. Hello, everyone. My name is Felix Konomakis. I'm a psychologist and I'm the Chief Unstressing Officer of my clinic. I've been a psychologist for 21 years, and I see most people for anxiety-based disorders, but I do a lot of other things. And I'm here for the same reasons as my lovely colleagues.
Yeah. So
I was going to just start by asking, so what's been going on this week since the last clinic? What are we focused on today?
Well, we were chatting, weren't we, just before we went on live about the effects of long lockdown. You know, we're all, I mean, even the strongest, kind of most resilient people I know are really feeling it right now. It's tiring, it's taxing, it's boring, it's anxiety inducing, you know, it's, I know last week on the clinic, I talked about the different trauma physiological states that can get triggered by chronic prolonged stress or big shocks. Which we've all been subject to, all of us really. Fight, flight, freeze and fawn. And most of us are in one of those and shuttling in and out of them pretty much all the time. So, you know, it's tiring, it's hard work, you know, it is an absolute slog. And we've got this roadmap, but we're kind of like, we're all a bit tentative about it, aren't we? And we all need to find ways to get through it, and we need to find ways to do that together.
Absolutely. I think to pick up on that, you know, the first lockdown, people kind of, we rallied and, you know, we've got to deal with this. We didn't know what was going on or how we were going to combat this. And we got through it. The second one, a lot of people were like, not again, particularly when we thought that we were beyond the worst of it. And then, you know, having Christmas taken away, that impacted a lot of people. I think this particular lockdown, particularly going into it, we didn't know how long it was going to last. I've seen a lot of people that have been really struggling and suffering from the consequences of the lack of connection, the uncertainty, the loss of control. But this is a real double whammy, because not only has the pressures and the demands that we're experiencing significantly increased, we don't know what the world's going to look like when this all is over, if it will ever truly be over, you know, loss of freedom, loss of liberty. But the biggest challenge for me, where the double whammy comes in, all of the things that we would normally do to lift ourselves and make ourselves feel better, whether that's to go to the gym, go on a holiday, go meet up with friends and family, go to a bar or restaurant, go to the theatre, go to the museum, all of the things that we might do to lift our spirits have also been taken away. So we are more, you know, compromised, more stressed, more under pressure than we've ever experienced, and we can't really do anything to make ourselves feel better. So I think that's where it's really important that, you know, today we can have discussions around what we can do to increase our resilience and how can we empower ourselves. Power literally means the ability to do or act. So we can find a way to navigate to the point where, whether that's April or June the 21st or whatever the date is, where we can return to some sense of freedom.
Yeah, I second all that. I think for a lot of people, it's the unknown, the uncertainty, which is grating on them, because if somebody says, you know, you've got to train hard for 2 months in the gym to get rid of this 1 inch of belly flap, I mean, you kind of have an idea how much you need to put in. But, you know, whenever I open up MSN, for instance, there's conflicting news. You know, The jab is amazing. The jab is not that effective. You know, it's doing really well. It's going to protect against the Brazilian variant. It's not going to protect against the Brazilian variant. And, you know, you just don't know where you stand. It's always in conflicting, inconsistent information, and people just give up. You know, and they just have to blank things out. Things in a state of survival. But we don't know where we stand with things. Just the way things are, and that's also a demand on our willpower and our attention as well.
If we knew this was going to be 6 months and, you know, that was the end and we had certainty around that, we could rally and find a way to get to that point. But it's that lack of certainty which creates a huge amount of stress.
Yeah, and I've always said, like I work with a lot of anxiety and depression with clients, and I have done for 20 years. And I always say, all of the symptoms of anxiety and depression are intolerable, but the worst symptom, I always think this is the worst symptom of anxiety and depression is the belief that it will never end. Now, as a therapist, one of my roles is to let people know that actually it's very recoverable from, with the right support, with the right help. But there is an end in, even though you believe that it won't end, which is what you always feel when you have anxiety and depression, the worst fear is that it won't end, because pretty much anything is bearable if there's an end, like childbirth, for example. But one of the main issues about lockdown is that we don't really seem to have an end, or we have this end in sight, but then it changes. So, we feel really uncertain about that. So expecting ourselves to feel, I had a friend of mine the other day said to me, I haven't really got a very positive mindset at the moment. And I said, why do you expect yourself to? I think the most we can do at the moment is expect ourselves to be able to sustain ourselves, build resilience, and find ways to sort of get through each day and support ourselves. I think that's the most important thing we can do. And, we have to live in each day. I think it's really, really important. But, we'd love to hear, this is a live stream, so we'd love to hear back from you guys, how you're finding long lockdown and how it's affecting you. What you're suffering with. Feel free to ask us questions. We've got pre-submitted questions, but we want to hear from you as well, because we will be responding to those. And I'm just going to jump over to the questions actually that we've been sent in already. So one of the questions that we've had is, my problem is panic attacks. I am continually worried about having them, and no matter how hard I try to fight them, they keep coming back. I know that watching the news doesn't help, but I feel like I need to watch the news in order to know what's going on at all times. Now, this is really common. There's this sense that we need to keep plugged in. It goes back to what I talked about in the last mental health clinic, which is when we go into that flight response, when we get very kind of obsessive and we can't stop watching things and we feel like we need to know what's going on all the time. And actually we don't. Usually, if something big happens, someone will let us know. We'll find out in some way. The thing with anxiety as well, which is one of the things I specialize in, is that we get anxiety for a reason. So we have a stress response. And then when it gets super unhelpful is when we get into what I call the anxiety quicksand. It's like an anxiety loop. It's like anxiety about the anxiety. So we get anxious about something for a very good reason. We've gone through a stressful period, such as long lockdown, endless lockdowns, etc. But then we start to get anxious about feeling anxious. Then we start to scan our body or our mind for symptoms, strange thoughts, our heart palpitations, we can't sleep. We start to scan our body and our mind. So then we start to get anxious about feeling anxious. And then we get caught in this kind of loop. And one of the most important things we can do is remind ourselves when we're feeling anxious is that, okay, I have these symptoms because I feel anxious. Now, whatever we go into resistance over will happen more. So if we say to ourselves, I can't, I must sleep, we won't. If we say to ourselves, I mustn't feel anxious, we will. And the opposite is also true. So what I would say with panic attacks is I would advise, and I work a lot with panic attacks, is say to yourself, okay, so, I've got this anxiety and I have this fear of having a panic attack. Now, one of the things we need to understand is that we're not physiologically designed to stay at a level of panic. We will always come down. So even though panic attacks are really unpleasant and they're very scary, especially when you first have them, because you don't know what's going on, remind yourself that even though you're going to, that you may well have a panic attack, that actually it will end, you'll be okay, the adrenaline will come down. All it ever is a release of adrenaline. And you've probably been advised this already, but stay away from the news at the moment. As Felix pointed out earlier, It's conflicting, it's confusing. No one really seems to know what is going on. You can read 10 different conflicting articles, pieces of information in one day, and everything is moving incredibly quickly. And when everything's moving incredibly quickly, we need to do the opposite. We need to be slow. So there's the obvious stuff about self-care, but the most important thing with panic attacks is not to resist them and go, okay, I might have a panic attack and that's not very pleasant, but I will survive it. I've survived it before. It's all about your self-talk. I'll panic, I'll come down from it, and I'll be okay, because you won't stay in a panic attack, because again, we are not physiologically designed to do that. And support yourself as much as possible with your self-talk. It's all about how we talk to ourselves. If we say to ourselves, I mustn't panic, we will. If we say to ourselves, I must sleep, we won't. It's the law of resistance, the law of effect. So in a way, do the opposite. It's okay if I have a panic attack. It's not pleasant, it's not great, but I will survive this and I will get through it. And do as many things as you can to support yourself mentally and physically. Do either of you guys want to add to
that? I want to add to that, because I think we can talk about something here which is useful to deal with panic attacks, but just useful for the general anxiety that many of us are experiencing. I'm going to go as far as saying 85 to 90% of all the things that we stress about that cause us worry and anxiety are not happening right now. Yeah. They're happening in the future or the past, because we're stressing about things that haven't happened yet, or we're stressing about things that have already happened. You have no power over the past or the future. What we own is this moment, is being present in this moment. Now, there's another key thing to bear in mind. The subconscious cannot differentiate between what is real and what is perceived. If you're sitting there saying, oh my God, everything's terrible, the world's fallen to pieces, you're right. If you say to yourself, everything's wonderful, you're also right. Because you will find, your brain will find, your subconscious mind will find reasons to justify whatever you have decided. Coming back to the point around panic attacks, if you say to yourself, oh my God, I'm having a panic attack. Oh my God, I'm having a panic attack. Guess what? You are talking yourself into a panic attack. Your subconscious is creating that experience. In the same way, if you remember something sad that happened, maybe the loss of a loved one or a breakup of a relationship, there may not be anything sad or upsetting happening right now, but by going into that experience deeply enough, your body will physically react to whatever you created at a subconscious level. So you may actually start crying, even though there's nothing sad happening in front of you. Or something that happens to me quite a lot, when I used to get on a train or a plane and I'd go deep into my thoughts, I might remember something funny or silly that happened. And all of a sudden I might start giggling like a madman. There's nothing funny going on, but I've got something funny going on that's so real for me, it causes a physical reaction. So if we know that that's the case, and you're potentially talking yourself into a panic attack, the best thing you can do is bring yourself back to the reality of this moment, rather than this perceptual reality that you're creating, which is causing a panic attack. So a really simple technique is you kind of stand wherever you are and look 20, 30 meters ahead of you. Look into the distance, take 4 or 5 breaths. So you're focused on what is happening right now, which is your breath and looking into the distance. What do you see? What's going on around you? And then turn 90 degrees. Do the same again. 4 or 5 breaths, then turn again, and just do a full 360. And I promise you, by the time you've gone a full 360, you will have brought yourself back to this moment using your breath. You would have started to calm yourself down, and you will potentially have averted that panic attack. That's useful if you're about to have a panic attack, but also if you're feeling really stressed or anxious, you've gone into kind of these deep repetitive thoughts, just bringing yourself back with a grounding exercise like that could be really, really powerful.
Well done, thank you. And over to Felix, who specialises in anxiety disorders, probably got some more to add there.
What they said, I think, is my, I think you cut this idea of fighting it. I'm very much against it.
Yeah.
I fight that idea because I've got real children. And so I find that I have a relationship with my subconscious mind like I do with my children. So, one of my kids is scared, fighting it won't work. The child needs soothing, reassuring and comforting. And in a way, your subconscious mind is a bit like that too. So when your subconscious is scared about stuff, to say, well, I don't want to think about that. Because as Zoe said, what you resist persists, pushes back. So fighting doesn't work. You've got to say, what's on your mind? What are you specifically scared about? Well, here's what we can do about that. Here's some ideas. Or let's focus the mind somewhere else. So I'm a great fan of having a dialogue with a scared, anxious part of you. One thing I'll also add is when people are panicking, they are hyperventilating, because in ancient times, we'd be going, we're about to sort of spear our food, or drinking by a pool with some lion might jump out. So we're getting in oxygen probably to, have that explosive response of running away. But because we don't have a predator or a hostile caveman, we're over breathing, and that creates a bunch of other symptoms in the body. So that's why, in the olden days, you used to see on TV this brown paper bag. And the idea of that is if you're breathing in too much oxygen, that's leading to a bunch of symptoms. So basically shut your mouth, just put your hand over your mouth and breathe through your nose. That's going to slow down your breathing. So you can see already that's slowing down my breathing, because I can only breathe in and out one way. Whereas with my mouth, I can do both at the same time. So I would lower your, decrease the breathing like so, and then do what Neil said. As you're breathing, look left, look right, look 360 degrees, and that distracts the mind as well. So you're doing a bit of a pattern interrupt with that. So you're addressing it in terms of reassurance, you're addressing in terms of changing the breathing, and finally the distraction. 3 very good techniques. Try them, and I think you'll see quite dramatic change.
It's interesting, just on this subject, we've had a question in from the live stream from Elle, saying that, hi guys, I'm struggling with the fear that I'll not be able to do any of the things I need for my mental health, like traveling, going to the ballet, vaccine passports are brought in. Now, again, there are people around the country, around the world, that are getting really stressed and concerned and worried about what if that happens. Now, there may be a situation where we do need to be concerned about that, but I guess the best piece of advice I can give you, given the fact that there are so many things to be concerned about, and exactly as Zoe said, that there's so much conflicting information, let's focus on what is within our control and what is within our power, and also what we know is real right now. As it stands, we don't know if that's going to be the case. So actually, as Mahatma Gandhi said, that 90% of the things we worry about never come to pass. We could put a lot of emotional energy into worrying about where the vaccine passports are brought in. If that doesn't happen, then that's a huge amount of energy we've expended on something that didn't actually come to light. I'm not saying, that if that comes to pass, we shouldn't resist that or look at how we address that. But at this precise moment, there's only so much energy we have, and being able to invest that in the things that are really going to add value to your life and allow you to not get overwhelmed. I don't know what you guys think on that.
Yeah, I think it's really, I think it's important. I mean, one of the, to be honest, I'll be really honest, the thought of vaccine passports doesn't exactly fill me with delight too. But what I will say about that is, I was talking to somebody else today about how we worry about the wrong things. If I think about all the things that I've worried about over the years, the things that I worried about in 2019, COVID, this pandemic, this wasn't on my agenda. I had no idea what it was, So I spent loads of time worrying about ridiculous things. I remember being really upset about GDPR, and God, I wish that was my biggest worry right now, right? So I think we worry about the wrong things, the golden days of GDPR, as I would say. But I think that I would second Neil and say that it's really important to, and there's 2 things I want to say here, is that there will always be people fighting for good. There will always be people fighting for the right thing to happen. There will always also, I think it's also really important to say to yourself sometimes, right now, right here in the present moment, I am safe. Because all of anxiety is what if. And there is, I'll be honest, a cacophony of horror shows that could potentially happen right now. And I think we're getting so bombarded. There's so much fear that we're being exposed to. And I think sometimes we just need to switch off from all of that and say, okay, what can I do for my mental health today? One of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself when you wake up in the morning is, how can I support myself today? And if you know that you're worried about the vaccine passport and the limitations that might bring in if it comes in, and who knows what, when, what if, we just don't know. And I think at the moment there's uncertainty upon uncertainty, is just, okay, how can I just stay in the day and support myself today? There's a really good book by Dale Carnegie, who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I think he wrote something, I'm probably going to get it wrong, but how to stop worrying and start living. But he talks about living in day tight compartments. So just living in each day as it is. That doesn't mean throwing away concern for the future and spending all your money in one day or anything like that. But it's like living in day-tight compartments. And I think at the moment, Elle, I would say to you that, okay, the most important question is like, not what am I going to do if vaccine passports come in? More, okay, how can I look after myself today? And realise that as well, you know, you're not the only person that will be feeling like this and worrying about this and thinking about this. And a lot of other people will be, you know, concerned and I think fighting, you know, potentially for inquiry into this.
And just to add to that, our friends at Save Our Rights have come up with a medical freedom bill, which is to resist any kind of move to this, if that helps to allay your fears a little bit. But as I said, at this precise moment, we don't know. So let's invest our energy on what we do know and what we can control. Because that's obviously the big thing that we're feeling is that sense of loss of control. Yeah,
definitely.
There are some really good themes here. I think one of them is, you know, keep an eye on the news, but that's it. Don't dwell, don't indulge in it, because remember, fear sells. They have a vested interest in just, and this speculation, and this expert says this, and this expert says that. And I remember 20 years ago, firstly was the Y2K, like the whole of society's going to shut down with the Y2K virus. That's when the dates for a lot of people are probably younger than that. And everyone was worried what's going to happen. Then nothing really happened. And then there's the Gulf War. Oh, this, you know, with Iraq's got a 1 million strong army. It's going to be this. And actually Iraq was overcome in 6 weeks or something. And then it just kept going on. And then avian flu, and then, you know, swine flu, and then everything just kept going on. And it was always built up. Always in the new, and just like, you know what, we just don't know how it's going to pan out. So I'm aware of it, but I'm not going to sit as if I need to be informed, as if I'm the president of every news bulletin. You know, no one really cares what I think. Let's see how this pans out. And if there's a problem, there'll be enough motivation to mobilize and do something. If it's not enough of a problem, then there won't be. So a little bit like that with the vaccine passport. If they become really unfair and untenable, you're going to get a natural reaction from the population. If they're sort of kind of gentle and don't really do much, then there's no real need to mobilize about them. So we kind of, well, let's see how much of a problem they are, keep an eye on them, and if there's a need, we'll mobilize, and if there's not a need, even better. But it's so what we're looking for is a philosophical outlook where you are saying, you know, at the moment we're fine. If it's a problem, we'll deal with it. If it's not a problem, then even better. You have to have that sense of calm about things, and that's what's going to get you keep sane throughout this process. You know, keep an eye on things, don't dwell on them, but keep calm. If I have to do something, I'll do something. If I don't, then even better.
Yeah, and trust yourself to.
We've come together to run these clinics to really empower people. And I just want to reiterate what power actually means. When applied to a human being, it's the ability to do or act. So don't believe me or any of my lovely colleagues on this. I encourage you to look this up for yourself. The most powerful human beings have the greatest ability to do or act. The definition of a victim is someone that is powerless to change their circumstance. And I don't mean to diminish somebody's experience here. In my opinion, there is an element of choice in both. Now, when there is a situation that arises, we have the power to choose how we're going to react and respond, both internally, which is totally in our control, or how we're going to show up or resist against that. So at this precise moment, let's focus on the things that we have within our power and what we can do to act to be able to navigate these situations to the best of our abilities. But it's a great point, and it was an interesting discussion for us to have in a broader context than just the vaccine passports.
Yeah, definitely, because it is about worrying about the future, and you know, but completely understand, Elle, your concerns. It's, you know, I'm with you there. Okay, so we've had another live question in, which is great. So Anon has said, I have days when I wake up and absolutely don't feel like doing anything. Completely understandable. And that is not like me. Making lists sometimes help. However, sometimes it really does not solve it. Any tips? Right, what I'm going to say to you, I'm going to share an infographic a little bit after we've spoken to Felix and Neil, but about the freeze response and what happens. You know, when we get a big shock, and in fact, I'm going to share it now, actually. Jordan, do you mind sharing the first infographic around what happens to our nervous systems when we go, right, okay, so let me just talk about this. So, okay, so we go through a stressful or traumatic event or experience or a series of them, or we're under kind of chronic or sustained stress. And this is what happens. here in the middle is our window of tolerance. This is the place where we feel good, okay? We feel normal, rational, kind of healthy, well, we can sleep well, digest well, make good decisions, etc. Now, if we go through enough stress, we get stuck in fight or flight. So fight or flight is hyper arousal, so it's anxiety, panic, hyperactivity, exaggerated startle, blah, blah, blah. Emotional flooded, chronic pain, can't sleep, really angry. You know, I'm sure many of us can relate to that. Now, if we're stuck in that for long enough, that's called stuck in on. We then get stuck, we then drop down into what I call freeze or fawn, which is depression, flat affect, lethargy, deadness, exhaustion, chronic fatigue. It's duvet days, duvet weeks, duvet months. And what it sounds like you're talking about, Anon, is being stuck in freeze, which is that kind of lack of motivation, can't be bothered to do anything, and really tired and just fed up. So what you need here are kind of like up-regulating activities. So you need to nurture yourself as much as possible, bring as much compassion to yourself. I always say to people, if you're going to have a duvet day, have a really good duvet day. Don't have a duvet day of lying there, beating yourself up, telling yourself what a loser you are. Have a duvet day of like, okay, I'm going to watch my favourite movies. I'm going to eat my favourite food. I'm going to be kind to myself. I'm going to get really cozy. I'm going to be really kind to myself. I'm going to be kind to my inner child. I'm going to be really good to myself. So the reason making lists helps is because it takes you out of freeze and into probably your sort of window of tolerance type response, and also into probably activity. So it's into motivation. That's why making lists helps. So I would say to you, nurture yourself as much as you can, nourish yourself as much as you can. If you need to have a duvet day, then make it a really nice, supportive one, and a guilt and shame-free one. And slowly ease yourself back into doing the activities that you want to do. But you need to treat yourself with absolute compassion. And I'm just going to go, Jordan, do you mind going to the next infographic? I just want to talk a little bit quickly about the window of tolerance and what this looks like. Okay, so, okay, the window of tolerance. So this is the place where we feel good. It's the place that's in between fight, flee, freeze, and fawn. And it's where we have psychological flexibility. So we have good boundaries, we feel calm, our nervous system is regulated. It's basically emotional regulation. And what's happened with long lockdown is that it's taken all of us out of our window of tolerance. And one of the most important coping tools and tips we can have, and ways of coping with long lockdown, is to build a really big window of tolerance, because we feel really good when we're in it. We sleep well, we digest well, we set good boundaries, we have flexibility, and we are, you know, ideally cool, calm, collected and connected. Now, one of the key aspects of self-care is always asking ourselves, what can I do to bring myself into window of tolerance? Which state am I in? Fight, flight, freeze or fawn? And then looking to do things that take us back into our window of tolerance. More sleep, more rest, more saying no, good food, getting outside, listening to music, the self-care that we can give ourselves within the parameters of long lockdown and the restrictions that we're currently under. So I would say to you, stop beating yourself up, be really, really kind to yourself, and you know, start making lists gently and ease yourself back into a better place. Bit of a long answer, but it's a subject I'm passionate about.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, because this is something that that I've done a lot of research on as well, and it's a slightly different model, but it's what I call the kind of the Goldilocks and the three bears approach to stress and mental health. We've actually used it in professional sports. I've done some work with the FA and a few cricket clubs. And really looking at kind of how your mental and emotional state will affect sports performance. And essentially, you've got one where the porridge is too hot, where the stress and anxiety you're under is too great. That's what I would call the zone of rust out, where your performance, output, productivity, your clarity is going to be compromised because you're under too much stress, too much pressure. So that's, as I said, like where the porridge is too hot. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got where the porridge is too cold, where you don't have enough stress, enough pressure, enough demand in your life. Now, this isn't actual, this is perceptual. So this is, you could feel like, oh my God, there's nothing to do. I can't leave the house. I can't get myself motivated. In that state, you're bored, sluggish, lethargic, you're apathetic, you're indifferent, you just can't be bothered. And then there is the sweet spot. There is somewhere in between the zone of burnout and the zone of rust out, which is what I would describe as the performance zone, where you're able to function at your very best, where the porridge is just right, where you can think clearly, you can make good decisions. You're literally in that peak flow state. You're firing on all cylinders. You're creative. You're enjoying yourself. You'll be able to collaborate and communicate with the people around you effectively. So it sounds like, Anon, that you are in the porridge cold state. So what can we do to help you to warm your porridge up? Now, as Zoe said, like sometimes we've got to be kind to ourselves and have a bit of self-care and allow yourself to be the cold porridge a bit, but don't stay there for a while because you're going to get the chills, right? And so what do we need to get your porridge warmer again? What is going to get you excited? What's going to put that smile back on your face? What is it that you normally would do to lift your spirits? And maybe some of those things you can't do at the moment. So what else could you do? Or how could you adapt your normal approaches to be able to warm your porridge up a little bit? But also, there are those of you right now that are feeling overcooked, where your porridge is too hot, maybe even burnt, and you are literally just frazzled. I know, to be perfect, I'm going to put my hand up. Like, I've been feeling like that for the last couple of weeks. I've got building work going in my house. It's got busier than ever before with work. I've had several 15, 16, 17-hour days where I've been doing radio and television work. And I literally, there's a couple of days I woke up, it's like, I don't know my name anymore. Like, there just isn't enough hours to get things done. And I'm just like, okay, I need to take the foot off the gas, and I need to cool the porridge a little bit to get it back into the performance zone. So being able to give myself a little bit of time where maybe I don't start work at 7 o'clock in the morning. Maybe I don't start work till 11 and I go for a long walk, or, sit in the jacuzzi for a bit, or whatever. But this is the advice I'm going to give to all of you. Every morning when you wake up, ask yourself, literally do the Goldilocks test. Is my porridge too hot? Is it too cold, or is it just right? And if it is too hot or too cold, what can you do to either lower or raise the temperature to get yourself into that performance zone?
Fantastic. Thank you, Neil. And I'm going to give this one over to Felix to answer because I've whistled on so much. Okay. I had to take an interruption of studies from, there's a lovely young lady has written in, I've taken interruption of studies from my nursing degree course at uni last year because of the impact lockdown had on my mental health. I have complex PTSD. My tutors have said that they think the trauma I have gone through my past will make it impossible for me to succeed in nursing. How dare anyone tell you that? I now feel lost and left behind and unsure if I can or even want to go back. I always believed my life experience would make me a better and more compassionate nurse, but now I feel completely disillusioned and I'm feeling I should quit and maybe look at becoming a therapist instead. So it's a great career. I'm so lost and I don't have long to decide. Any advice would be appreciated. So over to Felix with that one.
Thank you. Just before I get into that one, I just wanted to say with the last caller, with Anon mentioning feeling disconnected from things that gave him pleasure. Well, this sounds like anhedonia, which is a symptom of depression, which is that we lose interest in activities that were previously enjoyable. So, as a rule of thumb, we say we need to disconnect from things that are causing us stress and pain, too much news, too much worry, too much this, and reconnect to things that recharge us. It sounds really simple, but like a lot of things, they're simple when you apply them and they work. So make a list, what recharges me and what brings me down. And obviously, if I'm watching too much news and things like that, and it's stoking up those fear centers, then just stop watching so much of it. So you don't need to be briefed about everything. You're not the president or the prime minister. Just get an outline. And then consider, what did I used to do that brought me joy? And as you connect to that, this is relevant to the next question. You start to feel good as you do those activities. A lot of people want to feel good first, then they'll do the activities. And sometimes as you're doing the activities, you start to feel good and upbeat about them. The Italians have a saying, eating gives you an appetite. Sometimes you're not really hungry, but as you start eating, you get more into the idea of eating. With regards to the second lady, Dixie, I always look at trauma. I'm sure my fellow therapists as well. The first thing I look at is de-traumatizing the trauma, because trauma is a massive black hole of energy. it hijacks the brain, it immobilizes us, and it's really hard to do anything else when you've got trauma, because that's always there kind of taking over. So I'd say don't make any life decisions now. See somebody who has a good record of being able to de-traumatize quickly. And I'm talking about 1 or 2 sessions, by the way. If someone says, you know, we need a year of this, then avoid them. Modern effective techniques, 1 or 2 sessions, and then review things and see how things are afterwards. Because right now, when you've got the trauma and it's sucking up all your energy, you think, oh, I don't want to do nursing anymore, but I used to like it, but I don't feel like doing it. That's not an informed choice at the moment. The trauma is taking over. So that would be my first port of call. Yeah, take away that layer first.
I would say as well, don't let anybody tell you what you can or can't do. I was told so many times to go to a personal thing at school, oh, you'll never be this, you'll never amount to anything, you'll never do this. So many people told me I couldn't do things. One of the most enjoyable things in life is proving people wrong in that way. It's not that you should make it your life mission, but I believe that if you really want to do something, and it's okay to change our minds, then you can do that. Yes, it's really, like Felix says, really important to work on the trauma. I think that it's really important to support yourself with trauma. I think the relationship you have with the person that you work with on your trauma, especially if you have complex PTSD, is really, really, really important. And I think it's really important that you are allowed to work through that at the pace and rate that you feel is appropriate for you. I really do. So I would say to you, don't let anybody else tell you who you are or what your life's going to be. I had that happen to me so many times. I had I'm really glad I had the courage to totally ignore those people, as I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, which is this. And I think if you really want to do something, even though you're scared and even though you have trauma, I think get support with the trauma, but, you know, always go for your dreams. And I would always encourage that. And don't let anybody else limit you, you know, whether that's people that have traumatized you in the past or people, adults that have told you, or whoever who's told you, friends, exes, boyfriends, whatever, girlfriends. Don't let anybody tell you who you are and what you can and can't do. I think it's really important that you decide for you what you are capable of, you know, and you might need support with that, and that's absolutely fine. But don't let anybody tell you what that is. And it's okay to change your mind and say, okay, I want to be a therapist rather than a nurse. But, you know, make sure that's coming from you and not from somebody else.
This is fascinating. I think this is actually a broader conversation that is useful for all of us at this precise moment, because there is a part of your brain called the reticular activating system. For want of a better description, it's what I would describe as your focus of attention. So if you put on a nice pink jumper and then you go out for a walk around town and you suddenly spot 3, 4, 5 different people wearing a pink jumper, it's like, why is everybody wearing a pink jumper? Now, the reality is they were always wearing the pink jumper. You just wouldn't have noticed it if you weren't thinking about the pink jumper because you weren't wearing one. Or you learn a new word and all of a sudden you're spotting it everywhere. That word was always round you, but you just weren't aware of it. Now, here's the thing. If you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror and you say to yourself, oh my God, Neil, you're such an idiot, right? For whatever reason, you make that statement to yourself, because many of us are not very kind to ourselves. We don't have great dialogue with ourselves. We're not, you know, we often find ourselves being quite abusive to ourselves in a way that we wouldn't with those around us. So you make this decision that, oh my God, Neil, you're an idiot. And then you go through the day looking for reasons to justify this decision you made about yourself. Now, sadly, many of us do this, particularly people that have big dreams and big ambitions. They can be so hard on themselves. But what if you made a decision that said, you know what, Neil, Zoe, Felix, you are amazing. You're beautiful. You're wonderful. And that's what's in your focus of attention. That's what the seed you've planted in your reticular activating system. You are then going to go through the rest of the day looking for reasons to justify that. Now, all of you kind of went through this process at the beginning of this session. For those of you who joined us for the first time, you joined this live stream and you looked at us and you made a decision whether you liked us or not, which had nothing to do with Neil, Felix, or Zoe. It was based on everything that we may remind you of. And, you know, the way Zoe's done her hair, or Neil's pink jumper, or Felix's beard. may have reminded you of someone you know or something you've experienced, and based on that you made a decision. It had nothing to do with us. It's based on your subconscious bank of information. Now, right now, we're going through some really strange and weird times. You may not have a reference to this. So it may be something that you saw a movie about. You might have seen a Will Smith film like I Am Legend. And, you know, now there's all talk of vaccine. You're like, oh my God, everyone's going to turn into zombies or whatever. Okay, I'm getting a bit ridiculous here. But the point I'm making is be careful what you conceive. Because if you believe what you conceive, that's what you're going to achieve, right? And a lot of people start with this thought and they believe that thought. And then it becomes true because thoughts become things. So this is what I'm saying. Be really careful about the dialogue you have with yourself and the ideas you come up with and what you choose to believe, because you are quite literally creating your own reality. This is not some woo-woo, you know, the secret kind of stuff. This is the way your brain works. This is how your brain processes information. So what I'm saying is, you know, be really careful about what you focus on and what you choose to believe, because that will become your reality.
Thank you very much. Good. There's lots of interesting advice there, Dixie. Okay, so we have another question, which is what to do if one has very little support, usually the opposite, from community, family, and very few friends anymore. Not one person even reach out to check on us. Me and my beloved angel of a dog after the extreme weather of late. I've always had compassion and helped so many. When I ask for help, it is rarely there. This only serves to escalate the complex PTSD. Got a lot of people with complex PTSD tonight. You know, it's more common than people think, actually. As I work so hard to heal and grow, just when things start improving, something else happens. Yeah, life can really feel like that, you know.
Can I just say on that note, just reminded me, little bell went off. Somebody mentioned feeling very lonely in the last live we did, and Neil mentioned an app, which I think we need to be reminded of and put up somewhere. And then we talked about a forum, which was said. And so Neil, can you just remind us about that app?
Nextdoor. It's a community app. Every community will, you know, you'll be able to sign up to Nextdoor and find people in your local community. So it could be, you could offer to help a neighbor walk their dog or do their shopping, or you could ask for help. It's really useful. It's where people will say, oh, be careful in this area because a car was broken into or somebody's lost a dog. In fact, I found a dog in a park, and through Nextdoor within half an hour, we were able to find the owners and get the dog back to its home. So I think it's really good that we can find that sense of community, which has been so important for a lot of people who are feeling really disconnected and isolated in these current times.
Right. And Zoe, you mentioned about somebody was listening last week and is happy to set up a forum for like-minded people.
So one of the things we're going to do is not through recovery, is set up a kind of informal mental health Facebook forum where anybody who is feeling lonely can reach out to other people who are feeling similarly, because, you know, one of the biggest problems, the biggest wedges is the isolation. I always talk about this, you know, we need human connection, not just to thrive, but to survive. And we all need to be able to co-regulate. Now, co-regulation is when we regulate our emotions through meeting someone else. Going back to Neil's original point, meeting a friend for coffee, going to the gym, seeing the person in the shop, saying hi, going for a drink in the pub, whatever it is. Now, of course, these things have been removed through long lockdown. So we've had to learn to really self-regulate. And, you know, self-regulation, some of us have been doing it for a while, been really good at self-care. Some of us have no idea how to do it at all. Some of us never taught to do it as kids. And it's you know, it's tough. So we do need communities, you know, we need a community in order to be able to co-regulate. We're not designed to just self-regulate. You can be the most amazing psychotherapist, psychologist, stress management person, whatever, hypnotherapist, whatever it is in the world. We're not meant to just self-regulate forever. We all need other people. So community is really, really important. At the moment, because of the restrictions, it needs to be an online community. So going back to what, you know, Neil's tips, and also talking about what Felix has said, is about, you know, setting up a little bit of a Facebook community where people can reach out to each other and connect. I think that's really important, because loneliness is difficult. There's a difference between feeling alone and feeling lonely, and we all need to be able to talk about how we feel. There's a really good saying, expression is the opposite of depression. It's also the opposite of anxiety. It's also the opposite of stress. We all need to be able to get our feelings out. Okay.
Just take a moment to define lonely and loneliness, because for me, being alone is there is no one around. You're by yourself. Being lonely is feeling a sense of disconnection and isolation. Now, you can be by yourself and not feel lonely, and you could be literally surrounded by lots of people and also feel lonely. So here's the thing. One is actual physical, there is no one around, and the other one is that sense of isolation, because you could literally have thousands of people around you and still feel lonely. You know, like, that's why cities like London can be very lonely places, because people don't even know their next door neighbours. And if there is any good things that has come out from what's happened over the last 12 months, is people have been forced to engage and interact with people in their local community. I've spent a lot more time getting to know my neighbours and people in my local community, because that's the only people I've got access to at the moment.
I'd also say, it sounds obvious again, but sometimes you need to ask for help, because some people assume, oh, I'm feeling bad, surely someone will check up on me. And everyone's kind of taken over with their own problems. But if you go to next door or something and say, would anyone fancy a get together in some way? We walk our dogs together, or I borrow a dog, or go in the park. So a lot of people say, I'd be up for that. But it does take somebody to get it going, take that initiative, because everyone's a little bit like waiting to be invited. And we need to be proactive in these things, not wait to be asked, not wait to be invited, but say, anyone fancy meeting up or doing this or doing that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And the other thing I will say to you as well is that, having gone through complex PTSD, a really good book to read, it's kind of like my Bible for complex PTSD, is a book called Complex PTSD by Pete Walker. It's really good. It's really kind. It's someone who's survived it and overcome it themselves. So anyone suffering from complex PTSD or any chance of difficulty of any kind, or actually anything difficult, I really recommend that book by Pete Walker, because it really does cover all of that stuff off. Okay, so we have another question from somebody who said they don't know what to do with their anger. They're angry all the time, and they can't find everyone around them isn't angry, and they're like, they can't understand why everyone isn't angry. They're furious. Why isn't everyone else? And what do they do with their anger? I'm going to put that. I mean, I've got loads of answers to that, but I'm going to put it to you guys because I've talked loads.
Do you want to go, Neil?
Yeah. So anger is a valid emotion. Now, I'm not an expert on anger, but I'm definitely a witness. I've been on my own long-term journey with the emotion of anger. For most of my life, never allowed myself to express anger. I had no healthy outlet for it. It was an emotion that scared me, and I bottled it up with the inadvertent belief that that was the good thing to do. Every emotion serves a purpose. Every emotion is valid. What I would encourage anyone that is struggling with anger is to find a healthy outlet and channel for it. Because anger can be a wonderful ally. And this is literally, like, when I talk about my relationship with anger, I've literally been diving into this over the last year. I'm still very, toddler stage with my relationship with anger. For I denied myself of it for most of my life. But I found that actually anger and passion are very closely aligned. And when channeled appropriately, it can be used for creativity, can be used for physical strength, like whether that's when you run or exercise, when it's like, where you're able to channel it into something constructive. Now, I also appreciate there are lots of experiences right now that are triggering that anger response. So rather than either bottling it up, or what sadly is happening, a lot of people are expressing and venting it at people that don't deserve it. How could you find a way to be able to use that in a way that's going to serve you? There's a Native American proverb: there are two wolves. Which wolf are you going to feed? The wolf that makes you strong, or the wolf that makes you weak? Now, when we experience kind of these traumatic, challenging experiences, sadly, what a lot of us are doing are taking the fuel that is offered by that traumatic experience and using it to feed the wolf that makes you weak, because we are projecting that externally rather than finding a way to use that as fuel, like literally rocket fuel, to take your life and you to where you need to be. So, as I said, I can't claim to be an expert on this. I'm on a journey with this myself. And I found that actually, as I was able to tap into kind of the raw energy associated with anger and find a healthy way to channel that became a tremendous ally. But also, I came out of conflict with myself, because burying it is also not a healthy thing. It's not about suppressing anger. It's about finding a way to express it healthily. I don't know what your thoughts are on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's a really good saying, anger is the backbone of healing, and also I'd also say this about, when our territory is seriously violated, anger is appropriate. Like, I've talked about the fight response, the flight response, freeze response, the fawn response. Sometimes the fight response is a really good one, especially if you've been feeling and if you've been in a position of powerlessness. No, I don't mean, okay, so let's take, for example, someone who's been, I don't know, downtrodden all their life, but their boundaries violated, they've twisted themselves into a people-pleasing pretzel because that's how they were brought up, and they're miserable as a result, as you would be. People have just taken advantage, because people will. Now, sometimes in that situation, I will encourage the fight response. And when I say I don't encourage it, I don't mean going and lamping someone. I encourage it as in to set really firm boundaries. Now, the fight response is helpful. We all need to fight occasionally. If we get stuck in fight, we get exhausted. It's really easy to get stuck in fight, especially in social media. You can scrap for ages and it's absolutely pointless. But what I would say, if you've got a lot of anger, I would honour that anger and say, this anger is, I'm angry. It doesn't mean I'm an angry person. It means that I'm angry right now. I think it's really important to honour your emotions. Now, with anger, it's really important to get out of the body, not on someone else. So get it out of your body in a way that you can. There's such a thing that me and one of my associates always talk about, which is called having an adult tantrum. Now, it sounds really embarrassing. No one has to see you, but literally lie on the floor and you just thump your fists on the carpet and you just get that anger out of your system, or you punch the hell out of a pillow. So one of the most important things, if you've got a punch bag, I know a lot of men, a lot of women have got punch bags and they'll just pretend it's a politician. And if you get that anger out of your system, I think it's really, really important, because there's a lot of feeling of injustice at the moment. There's a lot of feeling of people being overlooked. A lot of us aren't being heard. We're not being seen. There's a lot of unfairness. There's a lot of difficulties, a lot of pain. There's a lot of stress. So I think it's really important that we get that anger out of the system. Now, what we can often do with anger is feel angry, it feels bad to feel angry. We don't take it out on our partners, don't take it on people that we love. That's important as well. But what we also don't want to do is take it on ourselves. So we don't want to act out unhelpfully. We don't want to act in unhelpfully. And acting out is when we lash out at someone else. Acting in is when we hurt ourselves. So we, drink a bottle of whiskey rather than feel the anger. We order 20 pizzas. We spend a load of money we haven't got on clothes or whatever it is. So we need to find healthy ways of getting anger out of our system, and a lot of time that's a physical movement. So it's punching the hell out of a pillow, it's lying on the floor and having an adult tantrum, it's going into a field and having a good old scream. All of it feels embarrassing, indulgent, and shame will come up, and that's okay. But it's really important to get anger out of your system in a healthy way. Sometimes you can talk to a friend or a therapist or somebody, or even just a helpline, and just get that anger out. But I think the most important thing is to honour it, acknowledge it, and allow it a voice in a safe way.
Zoe, I just want to pick up on that, because there is a therapeutic technique called Primal Scream.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think this is actually a really good thing for us to talk about, as we're getting to the end of the time we've got together, and also to honour the request from one of our colleagues, Adam, that's very much specifically requested that we do a bit more work. We really enjoyed that. So let's just imagine, right? And I apologise in advance to the people that are around you, but for all of us watching,
Felix's face.
Yeah, Felix is like, no, not again.
Felix is going, oh my God, what's going to happen?
Let's just imagine nobody's watching, right? And let's just think about all the things that have happened today, this week, the things that have annoyed you, that have pissed you off, that have frustrated you, and you've either buried that or you've ended up sort of venting little bits of it, but not fully expressing it. Let's just say for the next 5 seconds, right, that you just get to let that all out. You just release it from your system. We're doing this as a scientific experiment. We're not being silly. We're doing some science here, right? So first thing, assess how you feel in your body right now. Just do a quick scan of your body. Look around your environment. Notice how you feel in your head. Just appreciate kind of what's going on from a sensory perspective in your body. And let's just do this experiment. 5 seconds. I want you to scream so loud that the neighbors are knocking on the bloody windows and the doors. So what are you doing? Right? So this is going to feel really cool. But what I say is get over yourself, like get out of the way yourself and let it come out. Let's just
Can
channel.
we give them an alternative when they can like thump something, help, you know, like some people feel embarrassed, it's going to be like, people don't want to alarm their parents or their partner.
Absolutely. If you want to thump something, you can do that. You know, at the end of the day, whatever you decide to do, you're going to hear us screaming. I want you to channel that inner lion, that inner tiger. And Adam, this is for you. You asked for this, so here we are. So we're going to do this literally 5 seconds. That's 5 seconds of your life, but let's see what happens, right? Felix, I expect you to back me up on this.
I'll put my mute on.
Lion.
Can I thump something instead?
However you want to channel that inner tiger, let's just let this frustration that we've been carrying all week go and not take it into the weekend, right? So we're going to do this on the count of 3. So it's 1, 2, 3, and then go. Right? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Ah! 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 Does that feel good?
It does feel good.
Laughter.
Yeah, that's why I started laughing. Which is
my poor dog is petrified right now. He's like, "What are you doing, Daddy?" He's just come over. He's like, "What's going on?" Now again, that feels silly, but I just feel like I've had a tremendous release. Nobody.
No, it is. It's good. It's great. It's to get it out of your system. I encourage it, and it always feels. You know, here's what happens: shame comes up because we're not used to that. We're so British and polite, and we're sort of like, "Oh, I'd not say anything." Da, da, da. But it's actually it is really good to get out of your system. But what we don't want to do is go around, you know, creating lawsuits or etc.
Can I ask you a question on that? Because this is a big one for me. The people don't do the things that are most powerful because they feel silly. In the same way, and forgive me, I love you guys, but you both, the looks on your faces, oh my God, Neil's going to do something silly. What's he going to do? And as you said, we're so British, we will prevent ourselves from doing the things that make us feel better because we're worried that we're going to look silly.
Yeah. It's shame. I think, you know, I think there's a lot of shame. I think I always say this: shame and trauma is what's underneath everything, you know. And we feel embarrassed. We don't want to look unfeminine. We don't look uncool. We don't want to do all of this. And actually, it's really important and healthy to be able to get those things out of our system. Adam is going to be so delighted with you.
There is just one more thing for the more cerebrally inclined people. Now, I like to shout too. When you have anger, as explained that context, acknowledge it, validate it, as Zoe said, absolutely. Have a good shout, but also consider that's working with a symptom. And there's also, you can work with the cause, which is there's an underlying belief that everybody should be awake, realizing, believing what I believe. And if they're not, I'm angry that they're not. But that is actually defined as an irrational belief. An irrational belief is demanding that the universe operates other than it does. There is nothing in the universe to say everybody should be equally proactive, equally awake, equally enlightened, equally motivated. Reality is different. A rational belief is accepting the reality as it is, so not in denial, but, you know, preferring that people would do this, preferring people do that, but not getting upset about it, because people have to come to their own realization at their own time. And you can't really speed it up, and not 1 second sooner. So it's accepting things are, working with them to nudge them, remaining in that calm way, that collected way. Because if you get angry, that only alienates them and has an effect on your nervous system as well. So, you know, anger has a time and a place. Somebody's attacking you, get angry. But otherwise think, you know, what's the best response right now about this? How to conserve my precious energy. So there's also, you know, different approaches to look at things.
Yeah, definitely.
It's so much fun doing this with you guys. It gets more fun every week, so fantastic.
It does, and it's really interesting. And thank you, everybody, and we hope that's helpful. We'll hope to see you all next week. All of your questions are welcome. You can send them in to info@timeforrecovery.org. Or, of course, you can pop them on the live stream. We'll be back next Thursday, 8 o'clock. Send your questions. Think about what you're struggling with. You know, this is tough. We can do this. Let's get through this together.
Also, just wanted to add, myself and my team have put together a bunch of free resources as part of Stress Awareness Month, which is coming up in a few weeks. There's some tips on mindfulness. There's about 10 books you can download. There's a free sort of mental health stress test. And there's also a mindful colouring book. You can download it. It's totally free of charge. And, there's all these wonderful animals that one of our colleagues, Sam, has designed. It's a beautiful little thing. You can literally just print it out and colour it in and be mindful whilst you're doing it. You find that all at stress.org.uk/stress awareness month. So hope you all have a wonderful week and looking forward to next week already.
Thank you, guys. See you next time.
Take care.